Steps Part 1, Business Startup Basics. We're going to be talking about that in a minute. Just so you all know that we got a small group tonight. Still people coming on, but still a fairly small group, which is great. So I will try to monitor the chat and Q&A. Feel free to ask questions as we go along. I'll get us started. So I'd like to first start talking about SCORE a little bit. I'm going to come over here, look at my other screen, and kind of give you an idea of who SCORE is and what we do and what our purpose in life is. So we're probably the largest network of free services for small businesses. We are available for mentoring and for workshops and business education. We are all volunteers. There are probably 10,000 volunteers throughout the country and some 240 chapters, just like the one here in Cleveland. So we're available for businesses at just about any stage of the business life. So whether it's startup, whether it's growth, whether it's exiting as well, we are there for the life of your business. So our mission is to foster small, vibrant business communities through mentoring and education, as I mentioned, and give every person what they need to get started and thrive as a small business owner. And we do work in communities. We also work to serve underserved communities as well. That's a very important focus for SCORE. Anyway, so, as I mentioned, we're all volunteers. We all give freely of our time. Most of us are people that have had great careers. Some of us are retired, some of us are still working, but you'll find that the experience that we have here in SCORE Cleveland pretty much should be anything that you need in the way of business. And if we don't have it here in Cleveland, amongst the other 10,000 volunteers throughout the country, we can find it pretty easily. We've got a really robust system to look for expertise. And a lot of times we will bring in expertise from other areas to help us with our clients on a co-mentoring basis. We also serve as boards of advisors for small companies. So we have several companies that have been in business for years and are at a point in time when they need help trying to figure out what their next steps are or what their strategy might be going forward. And we will help them that way as well. We'll bring in let's say financial people, marketing people, the people that are necessary to look over the shoulders of the business owners. And that's available for you as well. So you can see that we are fairly robust. We go from Cuyahoga County, Lake County, Lorain, Geauga, Ashtabula, and Huron and Erie counties. So we're in 7 counties, pretty much right along the lake from east to west. In 2022, I want to say those numbers are from, we started 227 brand new businesses, created somewhere in the vicinity of 919 jobs, and provided our clients with services close to 9,000 actual touch points where we are working with clients either in a workshop like this or one-on-one directly. So we're pretty proud of that. On top of that, SCORE was Chapter of the Year last year, which is a great honor considering there are 240 really good chapters out there. We were considered the top chapter. So we've got a code of ethics that is very important to us. We want to protect our clients' privacy. Nobody is allowed to invest money from SCORE into a client. We're not allowed to do anything financial that's going to give us a personal return in any way. It is our duty to work at the client's for the client's benefit and not for any particular benefits everybody from SCORE. So all the information that we get from you is retained and is confidential. So last but not least, our services are free and unlimited. And while we get a small stipend from the federal government through the SBA, it's very small. Most of the money that we need in order to grow SCORE and to do the things that we do on a regular basis, we raise on our own. We work with foundations and other funding sources that give us money to help us. We are a 501c3, so it's a nonprofit, and we're here really to help the public with the mission that I stated earlier on. So again, welcome, and let's get us started on, well, last part of what I wanted to say. I'm sorry about that. I did want to point out to you as we go through tonight's presentation, and you'll see that this is one of 5 parts to a series, that it's really important for all of you, whether you're working through this process with us or not, whether you're doing anything with your business, to have a mentor, whether it's a SCORE mentor or someone else that has the capabilities of working with you. That's really important. And I would like to invite you to sign up for a mentor with SCORE. Again, no matter what point your business is at, even if it's just an idea that you're trying to flesh out and trying to grow, we're there to help. So what I would suggest is you go to our website. I'm going to bring that up live. There we go. A couple things. Request a local mentor, or you can actually go through and browse our profiles. You can even look at mentors in other locations as well. But I'm going to change this back to English. We do workshops in Spanish as well, and that's probably the last one I was on was in Spanish. So request a local mentor. Give us this information, and probably as important as anything is describe. It went back to, well, I'll just go here and do it, talk to you about it, show you the Spanish, but they want you to describe the things that you need from SCORE. This will help very much. Otherwise, most of the rest of this information is your name and number and so on. So I'm actually getting ready to present this in Spanish tomorrow, so I must have been rehearsing it. So let me now go back one. And we are in English. And I wanted to show you, there are, take a workshop. So all of the workshops that we do are advertised on our website prior to, and there are recordings afterwards that you can get. So if you are interested in this particular module, you can find a recording of it. It'll be posted right after we're done with it. We do it both on our website and also in YouTube. Right now we're recording in YouTube Live, so it is also in YouTube. So finding a mentor, looking at all kinds of interesting resources, things like business plan templates, financial templates, all those are available for you, and it's all free. So feel free to go on to score.org/Cleveland and take a look at the website and browse around. There's a lot of really good information available. So I'm going to get back into the presentation right now, and get us started. So this is Startup Basics. You will see that what I'm talking about tonight is an overview of how to get yourself started, some of the things you'll need to think about. We actually have other courses on getting started, but this is one of the 5, and I'm going to walk through those in a minute. It's really an overview. Within an hour and a half's time, it's difficult to get much more detail, but you can again work with a SCORE mentor. Come back next week. I'll tell you what's going on in terms of the rest of the modules that we will be presenting. So let me move on. So this is kind of how it outlines. This is going to be repeated. Again, today's Tuesday, so it'll be 7 days from today. You'll see the second module. In fact, I see Bob Fedor is on tonight. And Bob will be presenting. I may, when I get started here, bring Bob in as a panelist for a minute. Anyway, so tonight's Startup Basics. Next week, we're going to actually take a look at what your business concept is, how to articulate that, what you're looking for, what your competitors are doing, research on how to put together your business plan. We will actually introduce a case study for you to take a look at, and you may have gotten that already. I'll talk about that in a little while. Session 3, is going to be on putting together your marketing plan. So, once you get the idea of what your business is, you understand what your business concept is, you understand your targets and all the things that go along with that. Marketing is the next aspect of it. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the third week. Fourth week, financial matters. We'll actually be talking about putting together a little bit of a financial plan. We'll talk through a financial template, which is available to you on our website, but we will also send it out to you in advance of this particular module. And then the last part of this is obtaining funding. Now, funding is a difficult thing to get. Even if you've got a business that's been going on for a while, it's more particularly difficult for funding startups, but we'll talk about how to do that and ways to get there. The gentleman that's doing that is an SBA person, as well as a former banker and a SCORE mentor. So he'll be presenting that. So, as you're going through this, while this does say week 2, making a go or no-go decision, there's no reason why you can't make the no-go or the go decision in the last of the weeks that are here. But working toward that idea, if it's a good idea, whether it's something that makes financial sense, whether there's return on your investment, whether there's return on your time, those are all things that we'll talk about over the 5 weeks that this program will work. So here's a little bit about the agenda for tonight. So we're going to talk about the benefits of this workshop, the myths and realities of being an entrepreneur, and there are several of those, some critical success factors, and a lot of these are some common sense things, but I can tell you, and as we get into this, starting a business will be one of the hardest things you'll ever do in your lifetime, and getting it up and running and making money with it, making it work is very, very difficult. And that's something you'll spend a lot of time doing. So, if you think that for the most part, you're going to get away easy and have time for yourself, it's quite the opposite. We'll see as we go along. Understanding your options, knowing what type of business that you might want to consider starting. From a legal perspective, we'll talk about those. I've got a handout on that as well. And let me tell you to jot this down right now. And it's probably later on in this presentation. If not, you should go to ohio.gov. And then once you're on that home page, business, and then starting a business. And it gives you a lot of outlines about what the state is looking for, up to and including some things you'll have to take care of with the IRS, registering a name, registering your business, and I'll go through that in a few minutes. A little bit about business ownership, making it legal. Knowing your options really is what type of business you want to be in, whether you're starting it, whether you're buying somebody else's. We'll talk about that as we go along. And then making it legal, that's what I was just talking about. Business plan basics and a little bit of a self-assessment. And then let's talk about next steps. So the benefits of this workshop is that it's going to help you know whether or not you've got a feasible business or not. Now, having said that, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you feel that your business is feasible, it's going to be successful. Feasibility and success are 2 different things. And, again, I would encourage you all, and I'm going to say this several times during the course of the evening, to work with a SCORE mentor. And if not a SCORE mentor, somebody else that knows business and you trust. There are several other organizations in this ecosystem here in the Cleveland area, Urban League, ECDI, SBDCs, and several others that can help you with your businesses. SCORE's primary purpose in life, however, is to mentor, and that's our capacity. Many of the other organizations don't quite have the capacity we do, but they are very, very good at what they do. So a mentor is very, very important for you as somebody to work with through the life of your business. So we're going to go through a little bit about decision-making process. The idea here, workshop benefits is to make that go or no-go decision. And again, if you like that business idea and it looks like a go, it's still a lot of work to do to make it successful. And having the core information that you need to complete a business plan for bankers. And I'm not going to talk that much about funding and banking. You'll see that in the next few sessions, but you don't want to walk into a funding source of any kind, even if it's your own parents or people that you're borrowing money from or who are investing, without a good, solid, strong plan that outlines everything you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And that's what we're going to be talking about over the next 5 weeks. And then the last part of this is to give you the direction that you need to get started. You know, a business plan, and what we're talking about here is a blueprint. And it's something that you can devise based on the ideas and based on the things that you'll learn over the next few weeks. So let's talk about myths. And I told you a lot of these are pretty much common sense. As an entrepreneur, you won't have to work that hard. As I mentioned before, it'll be the hardest thing you ever do. If you're running a business and putting that together and getting it up and running, you will have good times and bad times, I promise. But you need to stay with it if you're going to make it successful. One thing that we notice is a lot of times we will get clients that come to us and they have an idea, and we'll talk to them about the various aspects of their business and even assign work for them to do that is important and imperative to get their businesses up and running, and they don't do the work, and they come back week after week having done nothing more than, you know, what they started with. If you're not going to be pushing yourself to do the work that's necessary to get your business running, you will not be successful. And you know, we know when you first contact us and start working with us, those people that really intend to get the job done, and they do. And you know, a few hours with SCORE makes a big difference in terms of the success factor with your own business. Anyway, you know, owners can deduct everything from their expenses. Well, that's not necessarily the truth. There are a lot of things that can be deducted. One of the things that we will advise you to do during the course of these 5 weeks and anytime you talk with us is to have somebody that is a financial expert that can work with you. It could be a CPA, bookkeeper, however you want to do that, but people that do know the ropes in terms of taxes. All too often, we will have clients that come to us that have businesses that are up and running, and many of them making money, but they have absolutely no idea what is going on financially within their own business. So business comes in, they're getting paid in cash, they're paying cash out, they're not part of the system, they purposely avoid being in the system. And at a point in time, if you need money or you need to grow in any way, and you don't have that financial backing behind you, and when I say backing, I'm talking about records, good, strong records, you will not be able to get any further with your business. And listen, there are plenty of solopreneurs out there that are doing a cash business doing fine, but I don't recommend it. We don't recommend it. We recommend doing it properly and paying taxes where taxes are needed. And if you're paying taxes, you're being successful most of the time. Myth 4, as a business owner, you won't have a boss. Now, I don't need to tell you too much about that. Everybody's going to be your boss, and you've got to please everybody one way or another. And then business owners get to do whatever they want to. You won't have time to get to do what you want to, up to and including, and mark this down, going on vacations, taking time off, even doing, household chores and errands. You will be spending most of your waking time running and growing your business. Now, there are businesses that can do well on their own, and maybe that's something that you want to take a look into. Some of the online businesses, some of the stuff where you've got a website set up, people come in, they pay you money, and you send them product, or you send them information. Certainly that's a possibility. But when you're looking at either brick and mortar or service businesses, business to business, or business to consumers or manufacturers, with a product, you don't have that much time. So just very quick, I'm not going to stay with this too long. Success and failure rates, this changes all the time, but 25% or so in the first year will fail. And then, as you can see, after 5 years, and then it gets even a little bit worse going forward. But the issue I see is businesses obviously don't plan to fail, but they do fail to plan. And if you're not planning and thinking ahead and looking at statistics and numbers and measurements, then you don't know whether or not you're making money. It's really important. So one thing I think that is extremely important, and I don't know how much you have thought about that, but just having some experience in the field that you're thinking about starting your business. If you don't, it's going to be a learning experience. And sometimes we'll even advise our clients to get a job with a company that does what it is that they'd like to do. If you are going to open up a restaurant and you're a great cook, a great chef, if you don't have restaurant experience and you know the failure rates of restaurants, you won't do well whatsoever. So that's why you need to get out and get that education or experience within that field. So there's a lot of areas where you might be able to squeak by with, let's say, a franchise where a lot of the work's been done for you. And I'll go into franchises later on. But if you're starting your own business or you're buying a business or you're getting into a field, you should have experience in there. One of the very first things that a lender will ask is, what is your experience? Strong work ethic, I don't need to go into that any further. We talked about that. Effective time management, that again, I don't need to go into too much further. Ability to manage and multitask. Yeah, you're going to have balls up in the air all the time. That's just the life of being a business owner or an entrepreneur. So I'm going to leave that there. And then willingness to ask for help and take advice from others. While it seems so simple, I can't tell you how important it is. And if you ask any successful entrepreneur out there about that, you're going to get people telling you that one of the things that made me successful is my mentor, so-and-so, or, somebody that I've worked with in my career that's helped me out here, or I asked a bunch of people, or I joined this group and that's where my help came from. So I can't express how important it is, whether it's SCORE or somebody else, to have a mentor, to have a banker, to have a financial person, to have a legal person. I don't know if I've missed any, but those are all important things that you want to look at. So adequate capital. A lot of people will go in and bootstrap a business, and that's okay. But it might take you a lot longer. It might be more difficult. It might have more peril involved in it than if you had adequate capital. So what I would recommend you do is take stock of what you have. If it's money that you've got set aside, if it's savings, I don't necessarily recommend using anything like credit cards, although people do. If you're going for any kind of funding, anybody that is going to loan you money, other than grants and other kinds of programs, is going to want skin in the game. So you're going to have to come in with something. Now, there are small businesses that start out as side hustles, and slowly but surely bootstrap themselves to a point where they've got an ongoing up and running business that works well and has grown and has begun earning money. But it's a longer route, but it does work. So let me just do one thing, if I may. Just bear with me 1 second. There we go. So Bob Fedor, I just promoted you to a panelist. If you have anything to say, by all means, feel free to jump in. Bob Fedor, who's on this call, is one of our SCORE mentors and been with us for a long time. One of our expert mentors, and I see him. There you are, Bob. Hi. All right, let me keep going on. So back to the slides. Essential considerations. These are just things you need to think about. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but some of the stuff, for instance, licenses and permits, a lot of that information you can see and learn about on the ohio.gov website that I just told you about. So tools and equipment, if you're making things, you're building stuff, you're any kind of construction, that's going to be important for you to think about. Leasehold improvements. So if you're going to go out and rent space, most times Most space availabilities are based on a white box. You walk into a white box, so any improvements that you make with your space is something that you might have to work on. Or in some cases, you can negotiate that into the lease. We're not going to get into that, but again, those are things that you might want to think about. Licenses and permits. So depending on the type of business you're in, let's say that you're working with nursing homes, or you are working in healthcare in some way or another, there's going to be licenses, permits, and certifications that you're going to have in order to get there. So think about that. Start researching those things for your own business. Professional fees. Again, I mentioned an attorney. I mentioned a CPA. Those are things that, and insurance is another area that you want to think about as well. And then your initial inventory. So when you start your business, especially if you've got a product, or you are a store, you've got something that you're going to sell, what's going into your inventory, or if you're making something, what is that going to look like? So when you begin to start up your business, you've got pre-opening costs, you've got inventory costs. Those are all things that are part of this. And then certainly, if there's any possibility of having working capital in reserve. Just to give you an idea, I do have a client that buys and restores homes and then rents them. And, there are times that, where he's bought a house, he's fixed it up, and then other things go wrong with it. There's a leak in the basement, something's wrong with the plumbing, something's wrong with the electrical, even though he's, maybe put not several hundred, but several $1,000s into fixing it up. There's always that. So cash reserves will get him over the hump until, a new property, for instance, is cash flow positive. So other things you want to talk about, if you're starting a business from scratch, or no matter how you're starting a business, if you are making that leap from your current, job into something else, you need to start thinking about what it is you need to live on, to make a living. And so that is going to have a lot to do with how you think through the finances for your business. Can your business support you living, buying groceries, doing everything, paying rent, putting your kids through school that you're going to need to do? That's something you want to think about. And that's part of your business plan. It's also part of your financial plan. It's also part of your personal plan. Think about areas you can cut back. I don't need to get into that too much. Outstanding debt. When you go to borrow money, one of the first things that are asked for is what your FICO score is. And so if you don't have good credit rating, then I would do everything I can to work through getting that set up, fixed, and ready to go. That's the best way for you in order to get some money here. So somebody asked, and it's a perfect question, and we'll talk about that. Does SCORE assist with nonprofits? We are probably one of the few SCORE chapters, and maybe even one of the only organizations in our ecosystem that actually does, and we do it very robustly. We've got a good, half a dozen to a dozen SCORE mentors who are experts at nonprofit. I'll talk a little bit about nonprofit, and anything that we talk about tonight also applies to anybody that is working with a nonprofit. And we will assist with a business plan to the extent that we will, there's a couple different ways to look at a business plan. There's a business model canvas. There's a full-on business plan. We'll help you with any of those. We'll talk through what they are, how they work. And if you go on to our website on SCORE and just type into the search box business plan templates, you can pull those up. But that said, we'll walk through it with you. The business plan templates are written so well that they've got instructions on them that will help you out tremendously. But what I do with my clients that are starting and writing a business plan is that I work through it a little bit at a time, so that you're taking off a mouthful to chew and work through it. Have them write it. Sometimes we'll put it up on a local Google Drive, so I can even look at it and work on it, make comments on it. And then when we sit down in a mentoring session, we'll go through it. We'll make changes. Yeah, so that's something that we can do. Thanks for that question. It was a good question. All right, so let's keep going. Let's look at, you need to make sure you've got the amount covered that you need to live on. So let's talk about knowing your options in terms of the types of businesses that you potentially can get into. This is by no means everything, but this is a lot that we can talk about. So let's talk about starting a new business from scratch. And again, this is by no means the advantages and all of the disadvantages that are out there. There's a lot more to doing it. And again, here's an area where your mentor can help out. So, if I'm working with a client and let's say I, as a generalist, am helping you work through your business plans, I might consider bringing in a financial expert, somebody that's been a CPA or is a CPA, although we can't give you financial advice, but to look at what you're doing and to help you to think through the things that you need to look at if you're buying a business or starting a new business from scratch. So number one, you're not hampered by, a reputation of somebody that you might be buying a business from. So, you're starting from scratch. You're not working in an existing universe or atmosphere. So that's always good. You get to choose your own location, you do your own branding, your own marketing, and explore your own business relationships. That's really, a lot of things that excite a lot of people. And then you can explore new markets and new directions and grow your business as you see fit. But on the other side of that is that you don't have any history. So if you're going out to get some financing, it's tough to come up with good forecasts, good believable financials, really understanding your market, your targets, and things like that. Those are all things that an existing business might already have. But if you're starting, you're taking a much bigger risk in doing those things, particularly if you throw all your money into it. That's going to, make a big difference. And you don't have a track record. So, again, history, you're not going to be as easily to get financing as possible. And you don't really know whether this is going to work or not. You can only anticipate based on a fairly educated, but still not something that's historic. Anyway, so buying an existing business, and again, these are by no means the end-all be-all list. You will get an established client, supplier, known locations. Your business is a known quantity with, potentially a proven formula and a name and maybe some income. You have an opportunity to review financial records. So if you've got an up and running business, one of the parts of your due diligence is to go back, reach back, 3 to 5 years and look at anything you can get your hands on from a financial perspective. You want to look at profit and loss statements, you want to look at balance sheets, and you want to look at cash flow statements over a period of years so that you can spot deficiencies or spot areas where, business is tapered off for one reason or another and delve into those reasons. So you have the financial records, you can review those. Since the business has a track record, it might be easier for you to obtain financing, particularly if that business is generating pretty strong cash flow. But there are some other things that have downfalls here. So there's potentially hidden issues. You don't know what skeletons are in the closet. So that's why you need to bring a lawyer in. Don't sign any contracts without a lawyer going through it. Bring an accountant in and make sure that that accountant knows how to buy a business. Bear with me one second. Anyway, I also, if the business does not have a good reputation, then you are picking up a business that's in trouble, and that might be a problem. What does their inventory look like? Do they have any employee issues? If you buy the business, what are you buying? Are you buying the stock? of the business? Are you buying everything? Are you buying the debt? Are you buying the assets of the business? Those are all things that you need to consider before you actually make that purchase. So, um, advantages, to buying a franchise. So franchising is another possible way to go. And when you are looking at franchises, there are some reasonably good franchise brokers out there that deal with franchises and do vet those in advance. And there are some small franchises that are affordable to people that don't have hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars to buy a McDonald's or a Burger King or any of those types of franchises. But there are franchises for power washing, franchises for janitorial services. There are franchises for painting. There are franchises for cleaning services. Just about almost anything in the field that are out there. But you need to vet those out as well. So one nice thing about a franchise is that they have become part of a proven system. So, for instance, if you're buying a small restaurant franchise or any type of franchise, I've got one client that bought a franchise that uses drones to take photography for real estate. Very interesting business, but it was an extremely well put together franchise. That's really important. You want to have a franchise where the owners of that franchise have done this business for years and have a proven track record. You want to make sure that they've got marketing power and sales power. And you also need to look at what training you can get and guidance, ongoing training, financial help, all those types of things. Those are some of the advantages that are out there. And then access to other franchisees to ask for help or even to get opinions on what's going on. So the disadvantages, though, are that, if you want to be your own boss, kind of limiting your freedom in that the system dictates what and how you do what you do. That's part of buying that franchise. Think about if you were to go to McDonald's and you wanted to serve hot dogs, and in your restaurant, McDonald's would come down pretty hard on you, unless, of course, it was something they developed. And when they developed something like that, they've done it based on research and other things. So that's a whole nother story. But things are, there's a lot of fees involved. First of all, you're going to pay for, to buy that franchise. Then you're going to pay royalty fees. Most of the fees are based on top line revenue. And then other things like marketing fees and so on. So when you go into looking at a franchise, while those things may not be bad that I just mentioned, you want to go into that with eyes wide open, and you want to make sure you understand. Again, you can look at profit and loss statements from the franchisor that'll tell you whether or not you can make money and what the fees are and how that affects you. And then you do your due diligence and you build a business plan for yourself around that, a financial plan for yourself around that. You'll know whether or not you can make money. Binding contracts, sometimes you limit your exit strategy, your options. There are a lot of things financially and contractually that you need to look at. Again, many franchises are vetted by one or two of the really good franchise organizations that are out there, and they're like brokers. They're just like realty brokers, they get paid by the franchisee, however, to sell their franchises. So keep that in the back of your mind. Let's talk about a home-based business. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I don't know how many people have that, but there are some tax advantages, a little bit less overhead. There also, you've got to be careful with the tax advantages in that the IRS is going to look very closely at how you write your home-based business off. You can hire people anywhere in the country or in the world. You can also sell anywhere to people anywhere in the world or in the country. You might have zoning restrictions that you have to worry about. You will be isolated. You will find it difficult to get financing, but a lot of companies that start up on, bootstrapping and do it well, started up even as a side hustle and go from there. Family distractions. So if you got little kids and you're working in one room within your house or in your garage, whatever it is, you're always going to have those distractions. So let's talk about nonprofits for a minute, since we know we've got one or two people on there. Listen, if you're a nonprofit or thinking about doing a nonprofit, would you mind just throwing something in the chat to let me know that? So I'll know how long to spend on this. That would be great. I appreciate it. So first of all, what is a nonprofit? A nonprofit is, especially that it is not an organization that makes a profit that is then going to be generated to the owners like a for-profit business. It's a mission-based business. SCORE is a nonprofit. I told you what our missions were in the first place. And any money that is taken in by the nonprofit stays in the nonprofit. So that's kind of how it works. So there are faith-based missions that you might have. There are missions that, many of our clients have decided to start nonprofits to help people. We've had several people that are ex-offenders and have left prison and actually have put together nonprofits to help those in the same boat as them. Think about if you've ever gone to Edwin's restaurant. Part of that, Edwin's is a nonprofit in that he takes ex-offenders out of prison, trains them in the food and beverage business, in the restaurant business, puts them to work in his restaurants, and then ultimately many of them, leave and start their own businesses. But that's a mission and mission driven, so that's really important. So with nonprofits, just like for-profits, it's not easy to get funding and financing, but there are things that you can do. So you may qualify for grants. There are many, many foundations that might have a like mission that might be willing to contribute to your nonprofit. When you put together your nonprofit, you're going to have to look at your mission, how you accomplish that mission, what your outcomes are. So the people that fund SCORE always want to know, how many people did we help? How many businesses did we set up and start? What areas did we work with? What types of clients did we work with? And every year when they've given us money, we have to come back and give them the details on that. In fact, Bob Fedor, who's on this call with me, is one of our fundraisers and is the person that's mostly responsible for doing that kind of thing. And I can tell you it takes some time from him in order to get that done and done properly. So, you've got it says protection from liabilities for directors, employees. To me, it's important. It's not one of the most important aspects. You can pay salaries. You can pay salaries to you. You can pay salaries to your staff. You can bring volunteers in. As you know, again, SCORE is a totally volunteer organization, except for a few very top positions that are paid. Otherwise, we are all volunteers, up to and including the regional vice presidents and other executive type positions. You also need to have a board. And so one of the disadvantages is that ultimately the board runs the nonprofit. Even if you're the managing director or the founder, it's the board that you bring in together to help you make sure that you are on target with your mission and all things that you need to do. So you will not necessarily be your own boss, depending on how you set this up. Again, if you ever decide to go bust, all profits either have to stay within that organization or be donated to another organization. You must apply. First of all, you would go on to the ohio.gov website, register yourself as a nonprofit, and then go to IRS and irs.gov and become a 501c or not a 501c3, or there are other nonprofit designations. 501c3 is the most common, but if you go on their website, it'll explain all of them. So especially if you're going to be tax exempt, you need to have those papers filed and be able to show your providers, your suppliers, that you are tax exempt. So there's many, many, many more advantages and disadvantages to nonprofits than what I've just gone through, but those are important ones. And if you're interested and you go on to our website and request a mentor, make sure that they know that you're looking for somebody to help you with a nonprofit, and you will get that help. Online businesses, I'm not going to spend a lot of time there, but they are a little bit lower startup cost, growing consumer acceptance to shopping online. I mean, that's more a way of life than growing acceptance. Expanded geographical reach, yeah, I mean, you can sell anywhere you want if you set it up. Expanded reach, convenience, accessibility, 24/7 shopping, all that, and flexibility for you to do business anywhere. There's still many things that you need to deal with. One thing with any business that you start up is you want to look at if it's a low barrier to entry. In other words, either from a cost perspective or from an intellectual property perspective, or, if I have a camera, can I go out and call myself a photographer? Yeah, and I can start a business tomorrow. That's a low barrier to entry because anybody can do it. And so when you start looking at your businesses, you want to look at what type of competition you have. If it is low barrier to entry, you're going to have greater competition. And that may be also with websites. We get a lot of people that have great ideas for things that they're going to sell on their website, but you can't get to a point where they're making any money with it. And one of the reasons is that everybody can do it. And then when you're on a website, consumers do have higher expectations and are less tolerant of problems. If you don't have a website, particularly if you're, doing some sort of an e-commerce business where shopping is easy and you can get in and get out quickly without any hassle, and, just take a look at Chewy and take a look at Amazon Prime. How easy is that? It's almost scary easy that you can go on there and spend money without even thinking about it. That's what you want to do with your online business as well. So the other thing is, obviously, this may not be a big deal for everybody. You don't really have that much in the way of personal contact, of course, unless you're out doing hard selling. But that's that. So let's talk a little bit about the components of owning a business. And we've got about 15 to 20 minutes left, and I think we can do that. First of all, you're going to wear all the hats when you start, and this is almost, a no-brainer to even talk about this. But yeah, that's something that we, want to caution you. You are going to be chief cook and bottle washer all the way through this. So, of all these things, let's talk about the marketing person. It's going to be you that come up with the strategies to understand how to create purchases. That's holds true with a nonprofit business. It holds true with a for-profit business, whether you're business to business or business to consumer. You're either selling a product or you're selling a service, or you're selling something you've manufactured to somebody else that's selling it. Those are the areas. And we'll cover this in a lot more detail. In fact, I think that I'm presenting this one, Workshop 3 marketing plan. But, it's just something you want to begin thinking about your target audience and the people that you're going to serve. Bob will talk about that more next week as well. Branding, I don't want to go into that in much detail either, but these are things that we'll talk about in the third session. We'll talk a little bit about selling, not so much about preparing bids. That's something that you can do. I've got clients that have come to me and showed me bids that they've put together and asked for our input on what we thought about those bids. We're happy to do that, but bidding is a whole nother process. We also have some people that are expert at government bidding. So if you have something that is a government organization or serving the government, we can help there as well. So, when you start looking at this, as you start putting together your plan, you want to look for some weaknesses in your business operation. If you have them, are there courses out there that you can take? And there are great courses that are out there. Goldman Sachs 10,000 Businesses is something that's not for startups. It's for people that have been in business for a year, but they've got a cohort that they bring in 2 or 3 times a year. They're specific to working on their business. So, that's another thing, that when you have all those hats that you wear, working on your business is very difficult when you're working in your business. We'll get into that in future workshops. So let's talk about some of the things that you want to think about as you put together your plan. Are you in a niche market, something that is fills a need that nobody else does, or that it's such a small need that one small business could do very, very well in it. Look at your targets there. Understand your competitors. We mentioned the low barriers to entry. The lower the barrier to entry, the more competitors you're going to have. You can learn a lot from your competition. We'll talk about that in marketing. Understanding your distribution and your merchandising, we'll go into that in more detail. And we'll talk a little bit about pricing in the next couple of weeks as well. How to actually think through the pricing of your product or your services. And understanding, again, and we'll talk about competition a lot, understanding what your competition is and how you want to fit those markets. And then, of course, credit terms and discounts. Those are other critical factors that we'll talk about over the course of time. So, one thing I would say, even as you're thinking through the ideas that you're about to develop, is see if there's competitors out there. And don't tell me there aren't, because I can tell you there will be. Even if they're not doing everything that you're doing, there'll be people out there. And they may not be in Cleveland. They may be, in somewhere else in the country. But understand your competitors, how big they are, what their pricing looks like, what their quality looks like. Go through their website, especially if you can make a purchase. Take a look at how those are being made. Reputation, strengths. There's no reason why you can't call a competitor and ask questions as if you are a buyer. I don't think asking questions as a possible competitor would be all that great. But if you call them up and say, hey, I'm interested in buying XYZ, you're calling a bakery, how are you pricing it? What do those types of things I think are very important for you to learn in advance. What their reputations are, strengths and weaknesses. Those are all things we'll talk about in more detail in the next 3 weeks. And going to those stores and observing. And we get a lot of people that do things with cosmetics and beauty products. Why not go to the stores that sell those and take a look at them, especially if they're smaller markets? Let's say you are going to a farmer's market to sell things, or you're going to a farmer's market and you are in that product business, beauty products and so on. There are going to be people in those markets. Take a look at what they do and how they do it. Anyway, let's talk about making it legal very quickly. These are the basic 5. There are more than this, and certainly we talked a little bit about nonprofits. Going into a nonprofit goes through a similar process as this. You would go to, again, the state ohio.gov website, look up nonprofits. It'll give you a whole litany of how to start it. And we can help you with that as well. And then you go to the IRS. So sole proprietorship, that's you and me or myself going out tomorrow and saying, I'm going to start a company called Bob's Pretty Good. And I'm there. I do it. I would still advise you, if you could, to go on to ohio.gov and register the name. You don't want to take a name that's somebody else already has. If you do that, then you might get a cease and desist order. Same thing with your website. You want to do that too. But I can go into business tomorrow and just start up because I want to. Couple things: you'll have tax implications. Your personal income will be taxed. You'll fill out a Schedule C, which I believe is a sole proprietorship or self-employment papers when you do your taxes. A partnership could be started the same way. So Bob Fedor and I can start, 2 Bobs tomorrow and go into business, and we're there. Same kind of thing. You want to make sure that the name is okay, and you want to make sure that at the end of the year you file whatever paperwork you've got to file. Limited liability corporation. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit more detail. When you have a sole proprietorship or a partnership that you're starting, you are liable for any lawsuits or any liability that comes your way based on your own personal finances and your own, from a personal level. And that may or may not be dangerous. Sounds like, you could be sued at a moment's notice for almost any reason. And that's something you want to guard against. Now, if you're in certain businesses, it's probably okay. If you are an artist and you're selling paintings, I don't know that you need to, go into a limited liability company. But the limited liability company is a company that you would start. You would go on to ohio.gov, register the company, register the name, go through one form. It's very simple, and send them 99 bucks, and you're in business. But you are a limited liability company. So that what that means, though, is that if there are lawsuits and liabilities, the company gets sued and not you personally. And not to say that that veil can't be pierced, it can, but it would be difficult to do so. So again, check with your attorney on which way to go. A corporation, or C Corp, as they are known, is set up whereby, if you take a look at many of your larger corporations, they are C Corps. And a C Corp is set up where you actually have a board of directors, board of trustees, whatever you have. You file corporate papers. You have to have an operating, not an operating agreement, but an operating, what's the word I want to say? I can't remember the word I want to say. But it's basically, it's like a charter. That's what it is. Then you also will be issuing stock and things like that. To me, it's a burden. Plus, which you'd have to have quarterly meetings and annual meetings with the board of directors and shareholders. To me, that's a little bit more of a responsibility than a small company that's starting out necessarily needs. I mean, you can switch these around over time. An S Corp, which is called a subchapter S from time to time, is also where the liability is on the corporation, and an S Corp is set up whereby taxes flow through the ownership of that S Corp personally. Again, I would recommend that if you're considering that, talk to an accountant and talk to a lawyer. So those are the forms of business. And you should have gotten, I'm going to pull it up real quick, this, and if you haven't gotten it, let's see if I can't load this up. Yeah. So this kind of just outlines what I talked about, okay? And if you go to ohio.gov and you go to business startup, it's in there as well and very plainly written. That happens to be a really terrific website, so I recommend you do that. All right, so let's go back and continue working through this. So I've already talked about it. Keep it simple if you can. Again, but don't take my word for it. Talk to a lawyer. Go online, take a look at it. There's no reason, by the way, if you are going to set up an LLC or any of these that we just talked about, that you have to have an outside organization do that, because they're going to charge you money on top of the money it costs for the actual paperwork. So if you're paying $99, somebody else may charge you $100 for actually putting it together for you. It's simple enough that you can go online and look at the form and do it yourself. And you can also get a SCORE mentor to work with you and help you on that. So think about some of these things, depending on what type of business. Most businesses have various kinds of licenses and accreditations and things that you need to think about. Understanding labor laws is going to be very important. Ohio Department of Labor, you should take a look at that and look at the various insurances that are out there. Understanding immigration laws, if you're working with immigrants, understanding the IRS and Social Security withholding and payments, that's really going to be very important in getting your business up and running. So it's not just developing your business idea, it's also doing the administration of putting that business together and keeping it running. Insurance, I think it's going to be very important. If you don't already have an insurance agent, I would say go find one that can work with you, that understands business. Here are a list of the various products that you probably want to think about. Again, if you're thinking about, I'm just going backwards for 1 second. If you're thinking about putting together a partnership with somebody, do not do it without putting together a partnership agreement with a lawyer that shows What happens if this one wants to buy that one? What happens if I quit? What happens if I get sick? What happens if I die? What happens if I want out? All those things should be put together in a partnership agreement.
Bob,
Yes,
Bob,
sir.
this is Bob Fedor. Just point on motor vehicle insurance. If you use your personal vehicles for business, you need a separate rider for business. Your normal automobile insurance will not cover you.
Yeah, good point. That's exactly right. So make sure you work with your insurance person and that person understands what it is you're trying to do. It's unfortunate that we've got to do this, but we've got to have insurance. I'm going to talk about business plans very quickly, and then we will be done. I would recommend, you take a look at our business plan template, which should have been sent out. Actually, what you will get from us is Ann's Nursery, which is a case study in business plan form. Take a look at that because we'll be talking about that the next couple of weeks. So why? You're going to look at your business objectively. Do not look at it, from a perspective of, it's personal perspective. You want to look at it totally objective. Your business plan becomes your blueprint, your foundation. It's a really good management tool. If you do it right, you've got everything that you need to start up your business and everything that you need to look back, because businesses isn't just looking ahead, it's also looking back, see what worked, what didn't work, how you can improve before you look forward. That's something that when you do strategy, business planning strategy, the first thing you do is you look backwards before you go forward. And then it's a really powerful management tool. And the other thing is that it's going to communicate your ideas as the owner, especially if you're going to be looking for financing. So the basic business plan, I don't think I have one here. I do not have one up. So you will be sent one if you haven't already. Contents, an executive summary, which typically you would do last. Business, the business itself. Bob's going to be talking about that next week. The financial and marketing supporting data. That's very simplistic. I'm sorry. We actually have probably 10 sections that if we were to work with you on, we'd want to go through, but that's just to give you an idea of some of the things that you want to start thinking through as you begin thinking through your business. I mentioned this before. To me, this is the most important thing. If you don't have a banker right now, and you don't have somebody that you can go to, so you've got to, let's say, you're going to keep your finances separately from your business to your personal. And you want to have a bank and a banker that you can go to and talk with. During COVID, when people were applying for various loans and various programs, if they didn't have a banker, they were put at the bottom of the pile. Their bankers are the ones that help them get those loans. So that's important. I mentioned a lawyer, I mentioned accountant, insurance, and a business mentor. So I'm not going to go into that in any more detail. So there is, and take this with a grain of salt, but you should go in there and take a look at it. There is a worksheet that you will get called the Readiness Self-Assessment. And just go through it, because I'd be curious to see if you take it now and take it at the end of this course, how you score yourself. It's a 1 through 10. It's very simple. It'll take you 5 minutes to put it together, but it'll also point out deficiencies that you may have that you need to make sure you focus on. And then let me go back to the slides. That's up here as well. This is the same thing. I just, it's a little neater looking. And then I would like you to write a vision statement to come here with next week. And maybe I will ask one or two of you to share with the rest of the group. But if you write a vision statement, what's the overall purpose of your business? What are you trying to achieve? Why are you in business? Talk about your products and services, maybe even some value. It's always nice to know that there's a pain point out there that you're looking to solve. That's always helpful. What do you think value that you'd bring to to whomever you're selling it to? Those kind of things would be helpful for you to start thinking your business through, even though as simplistic as it sounds. Bob's going to work with you a little bit next week, and you'll take some of these ideas that you'll put together on this form. I think it's just these three things. Do it in some detail. And those things will be the very basics of your business planning to go forward with. And I think that is it. If you can join us for the other sessions, you don't have to take all of them, but I would advise if you can to do it. And then next week, we're going to talk about business concept. Bob will go through that, and then we'll move through the weeks as we go. And this will help you at the end of this course to have something that you can take a look at, even if it is you decide it's not feasible. The exercise you go through could be applied almost anywhere, anytime you get an idea that you think has some business potential. So at that, I'm going to take some questions if there are any. If not, we'll call it a night. What if someone has a name that is very close to your own? I missed what you said. So you want to go to ohio.gov. There is a section there where you can actually look up a business name, and you should be able to see how close those are. I'm not an attorney, so I'm not sure that I can advise you that if you come up with Bob's pretty good and Bob's very good, that Bob's very good couldn't sue you if you were slower on the uptake. But I don't know that, so that's something you're going to have to judge on your own. If it's far away, then there's no issue. I don't see any other questions, so with that, I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Bob, there was a
Yes.
question on.
Oh, did I miss it?
It was, I think it was in the chat, on if running a digital service business and using a designated laptop to provide the service, should you also insure that via a rider on your homeowner's insurance?
Great question.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I
Again, you have to tell your insurance agent, what are you using for business versus your personal life to make sure you have coverage. I know of some very bad outcomes when people did not have business insurance riders.
Yeah. I would also advise that, if you were starting a business, assuming you have a laptop and you donate it to the business or give it to the business or sell it to the business, which is okay, that the business then owns it, and as part of and we're not going to get into depreciation right now, but it's an advantage to be able to depreciate a piece of equipment on your taxes and your P&Ls and things like that. So that's another thing to think about. But that's something that you might want to have a discussion with a mentor or your banker.
Bob, there's a question. How do you get a vehicle for business?
If you've got a business registered and you are the chief agent for that business, which you are likely to be, and you decide you need a vehicle and you go out and buy that vehicle and register it in the business's name, the insurance from the business as well as the vehicle itself is owned by the business. The business, it can be written off. Here's an idea that came through as well, and leasing is another possibility. You don't necessarily have to go out and buy it, you can lease. And for most businesses, you can write off the cost of the lease, or you can write off the cost of the car itself. So again, those are questions you want to either talk with your SCORE mentor about, but more likely with your banker or lawyer or even an accountant. So anything else?
Yeah, there is one. Is it a good idea to use a master lease for a nonprofit? It depends. We would have to look at that in much more detail.
Yeah, I agree with that we'd want to look at that in more detail.
Yeah, we do have at SCORE, we have a couple lawyers that work with us and give us general opinions, but not advice.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I look forward to seeing you all next week. I won't be here next week. I'm going to be out of town, but I will be here for the third one. So, Bob, thank you for joining us. I'm glad you were here to make it.
Thank
So
you.
that's it, everybody. Have a good rest of your evening, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.